In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a vertical line arrangement in this gorgeous textured container. If you want to learn how to create it, stay watching. So welcome back to today's lesson. It's going to be a really exciting one today because I've got this amazing container. I have used this once before in the past and I'll link it here so you can pop back and see what I created last time. Today I've taken inspiration from a really gorgeous rose that I had in for a wedding on the weekend. And if you joined me for the live tutorial that took place last Saturday, then you will be familiar with this coloured rose. It's called Bounty Way and it's an amazing shade of lilac with almost a grey tinge to it, which works so well with this amazing container. Now I have used this rose before and it is quite open, but it is still perfectly acceptable for me to show you how to use it in a floral design. It's probably not going to last very long if I gave it to somebody as a gift, but it's fine for me to show you how to create a design. I felt the colour link between the rose and my container was absolutely perfect. The container is really a grey toned vase. It's got this lovely textural quality to it, which makes it look like bark. And as the lilac rose is opening, it's almost turning into a grey toned rose, and the colour together is just absolutely perfect. This rose, as I mentioned, is called Bounty Way, and it was a more lilac shade when it was delivered, but as it's opened, it's really softened and it's gone quite a subtle colour. And I'm going to use it alongside some purples and some lilacs, which are really going to tone in so well with the container. Now I haven't done a formal arrangement for quite a while. I've done a lot of those whimsical foam-free designs that use lots of lightweight and airy flowers. So I'm going to do something more grouped, more formal and a lot more structured in its design. And if you're learning floral design for the first time, this is often referred to as a line arrangement or a vertical arrangement. So it's going to go upwards. And it uses or can use a minimal selection of flowers, although I've got a few different varieties. I quite often arrange on the channel with supermarket flowers to encourage everybody to go out and have a go. But the majority of the flowers that I've got today are florist flowers, but you could buy a substitute for it or something very similar from your florist shop or from a local supermarket. Right, this is quite a big, heavy container. It's very chunky. And it's hollow obviously all the way to the bottom. I don't want to use a full block of foam in there because it literally is going to go to waste. And I wanted to show you a different way of attaching your foam to the arrangement that I've done previously. So today, for a change, I'm going to use this green aluminium sort of bucket vase type container to sit inside because that's a perfect fit and it gives me a big enough piece of foam to arrange into without it being too large that I'm going to use an excessive amount of foliage to cover my mechanics towards the end. So that fits quite comfortably in there. It also gives me the ability to add water into the base there to keep the foam hydrated, and that's really important with floral design. I teach you lots of different styles of arranging, but if you don't keep hydrating that foam, your flowers are going to die prematurely. So make sure that you've got the ability to add water in to keep it hydrated. Right, I'm going to push it down as far as it will go because I don't want an excessive amount of foam showing at the sides. I don't really have any lateral placements, so that is adequate for today's design. My roses have already been cut short because they were used in this design here that I did on the live, and you can go back and watch that live video at any point. If you missed it, we do a live tutorial at the end of each month. It's normally the last Saturday of the month. And you can come along and you can ask questions during the demonstration itself. So I'm almost recycling the roses for today's arrangement. So the majority of them have cut to this similar length. So I'm not going to be able to get any height in this arrangement because my roses are too short. So instead, I'm going to introduce a stock, which is a lovely tall linear flower, and it's going to give me the ability to give me some height in the design. But what I want to do first is to use some trailing Clematis that's from my garden to casually cascade down over the front of my container. The container is quite harsh. It's very solid, it's visually very heavy, so I wanted to slightly soften it because I think my roses are quite delicate. They're very fragile looking, and I felt that the container was almost maybe too harsh alongside my delicate rose. So I'm just going to trail some Clematis from the garden down over the front to soften this heavy base. And if you haven't used a climber from the garden before, anything that's growing through the spring, like a Clematis or honeysuckle, you might have a grapevine growing later on the year, anything is really good for flower arranging. You just need to make sure it's very well conditioned and it's been cut and placed in water overnight for it to rehydrate before you start arranging it in foam. Don't pick it from the garden and try and arrange it straight in foam. It needs that day to recover and come back to life. And what I'm going to do before I turn it around for you to see is put 2 pieces in that are really softly going to flow down over the front of the container. And the reason I wanted to put this in first is because I wanted to see which way it's naturally curved, and it happens to be better in this design on the left than on the right, and your eye is being brought back into the middle of the arrangement, not out into the distance. And then with these shorter pieces, I'm going to look again to see which way it is better shaped, and this one has a gorgeous curve that comes inwards, and that's going to work to complement that base section of my arrangement and hopefully soften that base and take a little bit of the heavy weight away from it. And now I have some downward movement. Now I need to bring your eye upwards, and I'm going to use the stock to create those vertical lines that are going to make your eye travel upwards, and it's going to create the height in my arrangement. Now the stock that I have in is a florist grade stock, but you can quite easily pick up the stock from a supermarket, and very soon you'll be able to get this to grow in your garden. So if you're a keen gardener, the stock is quite easy to grow, and you can buy it as a bedding plant or you could buy it as a seed if you're good at growing seeds. Here in Wales, you will know already, we have a tremendous amount of rain, and it is raining as I speak, and our seeds are a bit slow coming through, but eventually for the summer months you might be able to grow stock in the garden. If not, pop out to your florist shop or to the supermarket and pick some up. Now this is going to go opposite my trailing Clematis, and I'm going to do like a column effect to give me some height. And ideally in this type of design you would go twice the height of your container because it's quite a visually dominant container, but I don't have any flowers that are tall enough. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of extra height at the end with one of my gorgeous twisted contorted hazel. I'm going to be using contorted hazel, but I'm aiming to go as tall as I can and bring that lilac colour very elegantly down to create what we call a focal line. And if you have the option, start with a smaller flower at the top and the bigger, chunkier flower head. Regardless of what the flower variety is, the bigger head comes more towards the focal point, which is going to be in this area here at the bottom. And there we have it. So I have height in the arrangement. I'm going to work in a minute on getting some width, and of course you'll know by now that we need some depth, and we get that by bringing some flowers or foliage towards the back. Now I often encourage you on this channel to buy potted plants to use as flower material for your arrangements, and I've got 2 different types of, well, I've got 1 flower and 1 foliage that were originally a plant. The colour went so well with my flower choice and really with my rose, and I couldn't resist them. So the first flower that I've got that was originally a plant is this fabulous Phalaenopsis orchid. It's really small and delicate. It's got a slight yellow centre to it, so if you wanted to incorporate a bit of yellow, it would tone in really well. And this is going to give me a real softness. Now again, take that a little bit of time to look at the shape of the flower head to see which way it's naturally growing, and for me it looks better on the right hand side of the arrangement because it shows the flower head in a better position. It shows the colours within the head. If we look at this one, if I just bring that over here, if we look at this one, if we look at it from this position here, you can see all the different colours. If I look at it from that position, you can't see all the intricate, tiny little details of the orchid itself. So I really need to put this in a position where you can see all those fabulous colours. And I think it's going to work really nicely on the same side as my other orchid, clustered together to create a little bit of a group. And that looks quite spectacular. And then this one, its natural sort of shape is bending forward. So I'm going to use this in this position here, slightly tilted again so you can see the beautiful colours that are on the inside. And if you're new to arranging flowers, then I would suggest taking a little bit of a breather sometime and really looking at the individual flowers to see what colours are showing. And that will help you get some inspiration on how you can combine colours and combine flowers. Now that orchid is from a house plant that's come from a supermarket. It cost me about £6 and I've already used it on that live tutorial, but you can see how versatile it can be and how you can use it in different shapes and different styles of arrangement. Now the other foliage that I've got that was originally a house plant is these fabulous Arum lily leaves. You might have these growing in the garden. It is the season for them, but this has come from a house plant. And I've got a few of these in the studio at the moment because I'm filming the new contemporary course and I've been using some of the greenery in that. And these are going to work so nicely over on the right hand side. This one has a little bit of movement, so it's going to help cover my container's edge and my floral foam, and it's going to give me a really nice texture against the softness of the Clematis on one side, but also balancing off the shape. Now I've possibly gone a little bit wider than I intended to in the beginning, but that's because I wanted to use those gorgeous Arum lily leaves. You don't have to go quite as wide as this if you're doing a line arrangement and it's your first time creating that type of design. But I've grouped together those three really impressive flat leaf, which is a really good contrast against that fussiness of the Clematis. And now I've got my height and my width in, I'm going to start working on introducing my roses. I'm probably going to use 5, but they are quite open and quite large, so I might decide only to use 3. I'll see now how it works as the design comes together. Now what I don't want to do with the rose is hide the Phalaenopsis, so I'm almost going to bring it in front of the stalk. There's a little bit of a damaged petal on there, so we'll remove that off. And that one rose will start a more dominant focal area there in the front. I've got that line material that brings your eye downwards, and then I've got a more rounder, larger flower that's going to help create that focal point. And I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to use 3 or 5, and I'm thinking that probably 3 is going to be enough. They are really quite spectacular. A really big size rose, and they are already, you know, I'm a bit limited with the size of them because they went in that gorgeous candelabra when I did the live. But those 3 grouped together at the front there are really going to give me a fabulous focal point where all the lines are meeting in the center. Now because I have the shorter stemmed roses that aren't going to get used in anything else because they're not good enough quality, I'm going to use these at the back. This is going to give me that depth, and it also gives me that visual weight there in the back that's important when you've got a tall container because we don't want it to tip forward. It's not so important with this container itself because this is really very heavy. It's very weighty, so I know it's not going to tip forward and I don't have to worry about it becoming unbalanced and unstable. Also in that live event, I had these very short pieces of lilac. This is Syringa. This is in season at the moment, so if you're lucky enough to have this in your garden, it's going to work quite well. It's a very woody stem and it needs to be conditioned properly. Again, don't cut it from the garden and try and insert it into the foam. It needs to be sat in deep water overnight for it to get a chance to recover from being picked from its main plant. Now I don't like that one there because it's sort of sticking up in the air. So what I'm going to do is turn it round and place it in almost in the opposite direction so that it's almost upside down, I suppose. And that now completes that side. I've just got a small gap under here that I need to fill, and I need to put some greenery there in the back. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce an extra bit of height with some contorted hazel, which is going to elevate the design slightly because the base is very heavy and I need to make it a bit taller to draw your eye away from the bottom. So I'm going to add that in next before I fill in those gaps there at the back. Now I'm going to lower the arrangement down at this stage so you can get the full design in, including my large bit of twig for the top. And this is contorted hazel. We can also have twisted willow, which is a bit thinner and more spindly. And what I'm anticipating doing is placing it in that sort of position there. And this is why I didn't want to cover too much of my foam, because I need to get this big chunky stem in. So what I've done here is I've used the knife just to take off a little bit of that bark. So we've got a squared off base, which won't rotate quite so much in the foam. Now I'm going to have to look at this while I'm creating it. Hopefully I can find a big enough piece of foam there on the side. But this is going to extend your eye upwards and it's going to counterbalance that visual weight of the base on the bottom. And it also gives me a link between what is an imaginary wooden bark type base and that wooden twig on the top. So it's sort of linking the top part of the arrangement and the bottom part together. And then I'm just going to use some very small pieces of eucalyptus. I don't want to overfill at this stage because that will make the design really heavy and cluttered. So short little pieces tucked in low to cover the base and to make sure that my foam is covered and the edge of the metal container that I put in the base is completely covered. Now you could have used anything in this position here. It could have been a flat leaf. It could have been something like a begonia or an ivy leaf. But I happen to have plenty of short pieces of the grey toned eucalyptus to hand, so I thought I would use this up. And the grey colour of the eucalyptus is again a lovely link between the base, which is important that you link the top part of your arrangement with the bottom part so that you have a really harmonious design at the end, and all of those elements and principles of design work well to create a gorgeous finished arrangement. So I'm hoping you've enjoyed me recycling those amazing flowers from the candelabra that I did on the weekend. As ever, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and you'll be told every time I upload a new tutorial. Put a comment in the box below, ask a question, and let me know what country you're watching from. And I'll see you for the next tutorial very soon. Bye for now.